Silent coming to you with some content about the dating pool, as I've been doing since the first episode of the kickoff of Play With It. Today we're talking about seduction. And for the context, the scope of this conversation, we'll define the seduction as an act that creates an arousal, something that creates temptation or allure, makes you bump, jump, spark, things out of the ordinary. If everything is seduction, then what is seduction? If you jump for everything, you're kind of just a grasshopper. So, like I said, we're going to set the context here. It is done. There's so many types of seduction, so many layers to it. You can be seduced by somebody's mind, by their body, by their smells, by proximity, the music they make. Can be seduced by silence, even the atmospheric silence in the room. Seduction can come through dance, so many forms, But of course, as with everything we've been discussing, I can't run the gamut of contextual stuff. I have fun, I skim the surface of things that I think about, as I say, and I share them with you in hopes we all get a giggle, learn something. I ask questions sometimes, and I don't always get my answers through a comment. People watching the show tell me what I need to know. I enjoy engaging with you, learning from you, having a good time, having a place to talk shit, vent without anybody getting all tutti frutti up in the ass, We should be able to come together as adults, I'm in my sixth SIXTH decade, enjoying my life. I've been through a lot, as many people who've been fortunate enough to make it here. And we have stories, some of them, if not many of them, with a comical twist. So I'm doing my share of giving back, paying it forward. We can call it either or, by sharing these blurbs and sometimes funny tips on how to navigate some of this shit without taking it too hard, and being able to express yourself, when you are having a difficult time, hopefully within a way that's healthy. This is one of my channels. I come here and talk shit. As y'all hear, I don't put names to stories. If I have stories, I don't have names. I'm not here to talk shit on people and hurt feelings and get into fights and all that bullshit that people do when they're 12 and 16. It's not my flavor, you know. So I take on different topics, I don't want to jump every fucking day and I look like a lunatic and I don't know everything, there's some things I'm familiar with and dating is one of them that I'm intimately familiar with. So that's why we're here. We're talking about all layers, as I mentioned, of seduction. You're able to seduce me and pull me right to you. And like I've said before, I don't even know anything about you, except your body looks delicious and it's looking very edible to me at this time. That's basically, to cut through the chase, what seduction is. You're drawn to something, normally with exception, it's not something that happens every day. It's an art or a form that has pulled you. Gravity has pulled you at your tickle points, your portals, where you have a special affinity, if you will. In particular, I like XYZ type of body part. Therefore, if you have it, I'm going to look at you before I look at the person that lacks such body part, even though said party may also be beautiful. Did y'all follow me? Are you getting that? And with that physical, there can come another type of seduction, which is, the art of almost touching, tantra, getting so close to a being where you are entwined without touching, your souls, your energy fields are so enmeshed because of proximity, but you have not made actual flesh contact, even though you're both engulfed in each other's energy. You know, there are people who love that seduction. You know, they don't want to go all the way. They want the as near to the 11:59 orgasm as you, if you will, as close as they can get to it without actually having it, you know. While you're dating, you're going to meet people of all of these spectrums. You know, people are going to come at you for all these different reasons. You may be attracted to people for different reasons that we're discussing. I like this person because of the conversation that I just can't get enough of talking to her, even though she's not particularly the type of physical person I'm attracted to. Oh my God, his body is fire, but I can't handle his brain. You know, you're going to have a mix of these things. The question is, as we always talk about, what risks are you willing to take to get that monkey ass? You know, do you want to deal with somebody with a lot of air up in their head that's just delicious because all you just want right now is a good time? Or maybe you want that as your permanent toy. Maybe you're looking for an airhead to control. You'd be surprised what people want. You know, everybody's not looking for someone who seems perfect. Many people are not. They're just looking for someone who's human, just like themselves, who has flaws just like themselves, you know, who's out here just trying to find their way like themselves, but has some of these things on this list, you know, that makes your nose go sniff that ass. That's the bottom line. You know, we work very similar to dogs. Dogs be passing each other up and down, but when a dog see a dog where they interested, they get up in them monkey balls, that monkey ass, and they take a good whiff like, nigga, let me see what you smell like before I fuck you. You understand? And that's what we do. We just do it in a different way. But we still get to that same part, you know, right before you about to fuck, you take a and see what this smells like, you know, before I take that final step. So at the end of the day, aren't we very similar to the dog, you know? That nasal seduction, you know, can pull you before you even thinking about sex. You know, people wear some beautiful scents that match their bodies well that will make you drop. I've told a story on a previous episode. I'm not going to repeat it. You know, I can relate to it. You know, the woman who I'm dating, she smells delicious. That's important to me. I don't want to lean over and smell her, and she smells like a combination of like mustard and cement, you know, just not right. I think y'all got my drift. You know, I'm not looking for that type of pungency. A woman that smells like she's been dipped in vinegar and fish oil. Some people might be. You might have that kind of job. You know, maybe it was a time in our past as humans where that type of thing was a turn on. Like the stinkier that bitch was. So like, oh yeah, because maybe, you know, I don't know. I'm not gonna try to explain it, but I simply am saying that my taste, I'm not saying even represents all people now. I know my nose, when I smell something good, like it is exciting. It arouses my senses if nothing else. I smell good food, I want to go in the kitchen. I smell good pussy, I want to go in that oven too. It's really no different, you know. When your nose gets excited about things, a lot of times you want to go closer because you enjoy that scent. And well, what do we do most of the time? Even as babies, that's what we do, right? That's what we do. We find these adventures. You know, that nose can lead you all kinds of places with that seduction, depending on, you know, what you're smelling with it. You know, you also got that arousal just through senses outside of the nose and taste. You know, we have the ears. There's that musical seduction. That's why a lot of celebrities can have all the fucking fuck monkey ass and monkey balls they want people read stories about you committing crimes and you still throwing yourself at them because you're so excited that, this person has this musical ability that you just, oh, you're seduced, almost like the cobra that comes out of the barrel, when the man plays the flute. You're just enthralled by the sounds, and sounds can take us so many places, and they take us through a journey of emotions. If you have the capability to do that with your voice or with your an instrument, it's an amazing gift. And if I, if I'm dating someone and I have the pleasure of dating someone with such gifts, I feel like I have a front row seat to something that, everybody's not getting. I get to hear this voice more than the people that are, paying to go to the shows. I don't underestimate it, devalue it. I'm blessed to be dating someone who is an amazing singer in a singing group, and, to be able to hear her voice in the confines of, places that we are. I never take for granted. I feel so blessed to, to not have to go to a concert to get a concert, And speaking on that note, like I said, in our space, being able to feel blessed to hear a voice, seduction can come from space, atmospheres play a big role in seduction. You can walk into a room and feel at home. You can walk into a room and feel uneasy. You can feel aroused. You can feel happy, sad, dull air, down air, stinky air. Y'all know the gamut of things, seduction. It goes so deep, when you're dating. Thinking about the first date and where to go, to set the tone for the invite, for this person to be aroused by the environment and comfortable to sit down and say, okay, this might be a nice date, if you're lucky enough to have a place that has live music, as I said, where that can be playing in the background, something that's suitable to the both of you, you know. Obviously, if you picked a place with good food, your nose is going to be on fire here, smelling all these things, getting prepared. As you sit a little distance away from this person, perhaps staring into his or her eyes, being physically seduced by the way the lips move as they enunciate in whatever language you two choose to speak to communicate, and that communication is like going sweet, and during that conversation, you may take moments, you may take breaks. I think there was a study at one time that, there are breaks in conversations every 7 minutes or something like that. I may be off by the number, or it's changed since the last time I read it, or I'm more forgetful than I'm willing to admit. I'm not too sure here. But, there's a seduction in silence as well, being able to be comfortable in the room without running your fucking mouth 24/7. Dance or have you dancing your way into somebody's bedroom that you don't even know because they wiggled that ass in ways that you couldn't imagine. A lot of professional dancers at nightlife dancing, they just fuck all night because everybody wants some of it. Whether you male or female, whatever your category of sexuality, people get enthralled by that seduction of that dance, and they want to dance on top of you, underneath you, in all kinds of ways. So think about this, all of this stuff when you're dating. Like, how do you even fit into these categories insofar as what do you emanate? Do a lot of people tell you that, your voice is breathtaking or you make them weak? Do a lot of people tell you anything about your dance? Do you get compliments or, positive responses about something related to your mental or your physical? If you find yourself constantly being acknowledged for a certain category, it's more than likely something where you have some talent, gifts, or mastery, that you can use as a part of your seduction. It's nice to learn what, people find seductive in you. Sometimes those things work to your benefit. I've seen people play on things that everybody's drawn to, as they should, I just watched somebody get seduced by a singer into offering a producing contract to said party. You know, anything's possible when you live in your truth and in your element. If you're physically fit and confident, walk, swag it, let people see it, seduce them. Why not? If you're mentally fit, diverse in conversation and mature, step out there and run your mouths with people. Let them know who you are. There's nothing wrong with seducing people with your strengths. A lot of people do it, especially in the music world, the arts world. We put them on pedestals and pay them hundreds of millions of dollars just to put out a painting or sing a note, because we're so enthralled and it makes us feel so good. It arouses certain parts of us that not everything can do. And we're willing to pay anything to get more of it. To catch some of the clues, avoid some of the pitfalls that you faced in other times where seduction has led to something happening to your life that wasn't so positive. During this dating process, don't just fall for seduction on the surface, oh, that ass wiggling, so let me follow it home. You might be following someone home to a place where three guys are going to fuck you up and they're going to take all your money. You know, you don't know what you're getting into with some of these seductions. You may be talking a good conversation with someone that seems so smart and harmless, and you walk off with them, and the next thing you know, you shoved up in their car, you get in and can't get out. So in all of this seduction, be aware that there's another level. This is all in many cases, I would say, what's the word they use? Third dimension seduction, karmic seduction is a better word. you know, Make a little room in there for some spiritual seduction. And like I mentioned earlier, in silence is often where a lot of that comes from. We all have senses beyond the five. We can feel things. We can feel the danger signs. We can feel the safety routes too. Don't let seduction become a like detour sign on the road that leads you from the yellow brick road down a danger zone. And to wrap it up, seduction, the act of arousal, the act of being tempted by things out of the ordinary. You're on your way somewhere and you find yourself taking a different route because a scent has caught your attention and you decided to make a left turn instead and find out what's behind that scent. You've already matched your nose to a possibility. You don't even know what the fucking scent is. You think it's just a scent of some beautiful, beautiful specimen that you're following down the street. You find the source and the person turns around. They're like 3 times older than you. You're 20, she's like 68. A very regretful situation for you in particular, as I said, because you're not a match. Even in seduction, the point is you have to be aware of your matches.